Hi, greetings, Goose and Goblins. Well, Horror Month, or in this case, 4 Days of Horror 2021, now continues on with Evil Dead 2. Ash Williams and his girlfriend Linda take a romantic vacation to a seemingly abandoned cabin in the woods. While in the cabin, Ash plays a tape of archaeologist Raymond Noby, the cabin's previous inhabitant, reciting passages from the Book of the Dead, Necronomicon Ex Mortis, which he has discovered during an archaeological dig. The recorded incantation unleashes an evil force, also known as the Kandarian demon, that kills and later possesses Linda, turning her into a deadite. Ash is then forced to decapitate his girlfriend with a shovel and bury her near the cabin. At dawn, the evil force throws Ash through the woods. Ash briefly becomes possessed by the demon, but when day breaks, the force is gone, and Ash returns to normal. Ash attempts to flee the area, but finds that the bridge leading to the cabin has been destroyed. The spirit chases Ash back to the cabin where Linda's revived head attacks him, biting his hand. Ash brings Linda's severed head to the shed, where her headless body attacks him with a chainsaw. Ash gains the upper hand and slashes the deadite Linda to death, killing her a second and final time. Ash's right hand becomes possessed and tries to kill him, and Ash severs it with his chainsaw. Ash then attempts to shoot the severed hand with a shotgun. The hand mocks him and ultimately gets away. Meanwhile, Noby's daughter Annie and her research partner Ed Getley return from the dig with the missing pages of the Necronomicon in tow, only to find the destroyed bridge. They enlist the help of locals Jake and Bobby Joe to guide them along an alternative trail to the cabin. The four of them find an embattled Ash in the cabin. Mistakenly conclude that Ash murdered the Nobys, they lock him in the cabin's cellar. The four new rivals listen to a recording of Noby detailing that his wife Henrietta was possessed by the Kandarian demon, and that he killed her and buried her in the cellar. Henrietta, now a deadite, possesses Ed. Ash dismembers him with an axe. Bobby Joe tries to escape, but is attacked by the demon trees and dragged to her death. Ash translates to the Necronomicon's pages before Jake turns on them and throws the pages into the cellar, forcing them at gunpoint to go look for Bobby Joe. Ash becomes possessed once again and incapacitates Jake. Annie retreats to the cabin and accidentally stabs Jake, mistaking him for the possessed Ash, and drags him to the cellar door, where he is killed by Henrietta. Deadite Ash tries to kill Annie, but returns to his normal self when he sees Linda's necklace. With Annie's help, Ash modifies the chainsaw and attaches it to the stump where his right hand had been. After finding the missing pages of Necronomicon in the cellar, Ash kills Henrietta. The trees outside begin to unleash destruction on the cabin. Annie reveals that she has only read the first half of the incantation. The woods attack the house as Annie starts to read the second half. As she reads it, she is stabbed in the back by Ash's severed hand with a Kandarian dagger. She falls to the floor and manages to complete the incantation before succumbing to her wound. The incantation opens up a whirling temporal vortex / portal, which only draws in the demon, but nearby trees, Ash's Oldsmobile Delta 88, and Ash himself. Ash and his Oldsmobile land in the year 1300 AD. He is then confronted by a group of knights who initially mistake him for a deadite, but they are quickly distracted when a real deadite appears. Ash blasts the harpy-like deadite with a shotgun and is hailed a hero who has come to save them, at which point he breaks down and screams in anguish. So now let's look at the production of this movie, beginning with the development. The concept of a sequel to The Evil Dead was discussed during location shooting on the first film. Irvin Shapiro, the film's publicist, pushed writer-director Sam Raimi to devise a premise for such a film. Record screenwriter Sheldon Lettich, Raimi settled on a story in which Ash was sucked through a time portal to the Middle Ages, where it would encounter more deadites. Shapiro loved the concept, and in May 1984 took on advertisements in trade magazines to promote the project, then titled Evil Dead 2, Evil Dead and the Army of Darkness. After Universal Pictures and 20th Century Fox passed on it, the sequel was shelved in favor Raimi's next film, Crime Wave, a comedy/crime film co-written with Joel and Ethan Coen. After Crime Wave was released to critical and audience disinterest, Raimi and his partners at Renaissance Pictures, producer Robert Tapert and actor/co-producer Bruce Campbell, took Shapiro up on his sequel offer, knowing that another flop would further stall their already lagging careers. Development of Evil Dead 2 initially began in collaboration with Embassy Pictures, which had co-financed and distributed Crime Wave. But the filmmakers eventually felt they were being stalled after 5 months pre-production work and began conducting interviews with prospective cast and crew members. Around this time, producer Dino De Laurentiis, the owner of production and distribution company De Laurentiis Entertainment Group, asked Raimi if he would be interested in directing an adaptation of the Stephen King novel Thinner. Raimi turned down the offer, but De Laurentiis remained in touch with the young filmmaker. The Thinner adaptation was part of a deal between De Laurentiis and King to produce several adaptations of King's successful horror novels and short stories. At the time, King was directing the first such adaptation, Maximum Overdrive, based on a short story Trucks. He had dinner with a crew member who had been among those interviewed by Raimi's colleagues about Evil Dead 2 and told King that the film was having trouble attracting funding. Upon hearing this, King, who wrote a glowing review of the first film that helped it become an audience favorite at Cannes, called De Laurentiis and asked him to fund the film. Although initially skeptical, De Laurentiis met with Renaissance, who highlighted the first film's extremely high revenue in the Italian market. Within 20 minutes, De Laurentiis agreed to finance Evil Dead 2 for $3.6 million. Raymond Tappert had desired $4 million for the production, but De Laurentiis requested a film that was similar to its predecessor instead of their original medieval-themed proposal, which was instead used for the second sequel, Army of Darkness. And now on to the writing. Though they had only recently received the funding necessary to produce the film, the script had been written for some time, having been composed largely during the production of Crime Wave. Raimi contacted his old friend Scott Spiegel, who had collaborated with Campbell and others on the Super 8mm films they had produced during their childhood in Michigan. Most of these films had been comedies, and Spiegel felt that Evil Dead 2 should be a less straight horror than the first. Initially, the opening sequence included all 5 of the original film's characters. However, in an effort to save time and money, all but Ash and Linda were cut from the final draft. The film went through several other drafts, including a group of escaped convicts holding Ash captive in the cabin while searching for buried treasure. Spiegel and Raimi wrote most of the film in their house in Silver Lake, Los Angeles, California, where they were living with the aforementioned Coen brothers, as well as actors Frances McDormand, Kathy Bates, and Holly Hunter. Hunter was the prime inspiration for the Bobby Joe character. Due both to the distractions of the house guests and the films they're involved with, Crime Wave and Josh Becker's Thou Shalt Not Kill, except the script took a long time to finish. Among the film's main inspirations included The Three Stooges and their slapstick comedy films. Ash's fight with his disembodied hand come from a film made by Spiegel as a teenager entitled Attack of the Helping Hand, which itself was inspired by television commercials advertising Hamburger Helper. The laughing room scene, where the objects in the room seemingly come to life and began to cackle manically along with Ash, came out after Spiegel jokingly used a gooseneck lamp to visually demonstrate a Popeye-esque laugh. Spiegel's humorous influence can be seen throughout the film, perhaps most prominently in certain visual jokes. For instance, when Ash traps his rogue hand under a pile of books, on top is A Farewell to Arms. While Raimi and Campbell have stated that Evil Dead 2 was intended as a direct sequel, there were differences between the first movie and the recap at the beginning of the second. For example, the Necronomicon is destroyed in a fire by Ash during the conclusion of The Evil Dead, yet remains intact in Evil Dead 2. The corpses of Ash's friends from the first movie are absent, and they are never mentioned. The cabin itself remains perfectly intact until the events of this film, despite much of it having been destroyed in the original film. And now on to the filming itself. With the script completed and a production company secured, principal photography began. The production commenced in Wadesboro, North Carolina, not far from De Laurentiis' offices in Wilmington. De Laurentiis had wanted them to film in his elaborate Wilmington studio, but the production team felt uneasy being so close to the producer, so they moved to Wadesboro, approximately 3 hours away. Steven Spielberg had previously filmed The Color Purple in Wadesboro, and the large white farmhouse used as an exterior location in that film became the production office for Evil Dead 2. Most of the film was shot in the woods near that farmhouse, or J.R. Faison Junior High School, which is where the interior cabin set was located. The film's production was not as nearly as chaotic or strange as the original film's production, largely because of Raimi, Tappert, and Campbell's additional filmmaking experience. However, there are nevertheless numerous stories about the strange happenings on set. For instance, the rat scene in the sailor was nicknamed Señor Cojones by the crew. Cojones is Spanish slang for testicles. Even so, there were hardships, mostly involving Raimi's costume. Ted, Director Sam's younger brother, had been briefly involved in the first film, acting as a fake Shemp. But in Evil Dead 2, he gets a large role of the historian's demonically possessed wife, Henrietta. Raimi was forced to wear a full-body latex costume, crouched in a small hole in the floor acting as a cellar, or on one day, both. Raimi became extremely overheated, to the point that his costume was nearly filled with liters of sweat. Special effects artist Gregory Nicotero described pouring the fluid into several Dixie cups so as to get it out of the costume. The sweat is also visible on screen, dripping out of the costume's ear, and the scene where Henrietta spins around over Annie's head. The crew sneaked in several in-jokes into the film itself, such as the clawed glove of Freddy Krueger, the primary antagonist of Wes Craven's Nightmare on Elm Street series of slasher films, which hangs in the cabin's basement and tool shed. This was, at least partially, a reference to a scene in the original Nightmare on Elm Street, with the character Nancy Thompson, portrayed by Heather Langenkamp, dozes off watching the original Evil Dead on a television set in her room. In turn, that scene was a reference to the torn The Hills of Ice poster seen in the original Evil Dead film, which itself is a reference to a torn Jaws poster in The Hills of Ice. The real-life Cloud Glove appearing in Evil Dead 2 has been attributed to Mark Shostrom, who was also working on Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors at around the same time as Evil Dead 2, suggesting he borrowed it from a Dream Warriors set for a day. At the film's wrap party, the crew held a talent contest where Raimi Campbell sang The Birds 8 Miles High with Nicotero on guitar. Wow. So overall, I think that this movie's pretty darn good, and yeah, while it is a sequel, it is also kind of a little bit of a reboot or whatever, but still, I think it's a good movie nonetheless, so yeah. So overall, I give Evil Dead 2 4 Necronomicons out of 5. Well, anyway, tomorrow as we take a look at the conclusion of the original trilogy, Army of Darkness. So, until then, hail to the king, baby.